Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again for another season. I know I kind of ended season 4 a little early, but I decided to come back for two more before season 5 starts. And I have the perfect guest for the last two, for the first part at least, and that is Dave Wall. So, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on, Andrew. It's a pleasure, man.
No, I am very excited. I know your voice from a lot of stuff, and I definitely know a bunch of stuff that you've done, and we're gonna get into a really good conversation. But we do need to get some stuff out of the way, importantly, and the basic rules that you
Illegal.
rules that you have done, and I want to tackle those in like 10 minutes or less before we get to all the fun stuff that we're gonna talk about. And I think
Oof.
what to talk about is fairy tale because I love fairy tale,
Yes.
and obviously fairy tale is here to stay, and I think you have
Yes.
Gajeel, and I did not expect you to be Gajeel. The way you look and Gajeel looks don't match up in my head.
Well, thankfully, Andrew, in voice acting, you don't have to worry so much about if you look like the character. It's one of the big advantages over my theater career, which preceded my anime career, was that your appearance is absolute immaterial in anime, which is great.
But one of the things I actually want to touch upon is that obviously you have a pop Funko of Gajeel, which is very cool. And there's some other stuff, and I think there's some action figures. I think there's like a fig pin. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Fairy Tale is that Fairy Tale is an ensemble cast. I feel
Yeah.
every character has a moment or two. And Gajeel's really cool because he started off as a villain and then he became a hero. And what
Mhm.
is that like? Because it's a really cool evolution. And if you couldn't tell, I'm a huge fairy tale fan. So
Hallelujah, man. Yeah, no, I'll tell you, it's really gratifying to be able to work on a role that has an arc and a trajectory and who changes and learns and grows throughout the show. And that's exceedingly rare. I would say it probably happens more often in anime than it does in other media, you know. Um, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of growth in your average American sitcom. Kind of the joke about a sitcom is that nobody ever learns, and like Peter Griffin's going to be just as dumb in the next episode as he was in the last episode. You know what I mean? So like, it's really rewarding as an actor to play a role who starts in a very specific place and proceeds to a very different one, and that always gives you a lot of juice as an actor. And it can be just as fun to play the roles that just they've got their catchphrase every episode, nothing ever changes. There's something very charming about those kind of characters, and that's why they persist. But being able to play a character in a shonen show like that, who really has like an arc, it's extraordinarily gratifying. It's very cool. I really enjoyed every bit of that.
yeah, and what I like about it, and this is just me as an anime fan, is it's really hard for me to get into sometimes 12 episode shows because I'm
Mhm.
investing time and then I finally love a character and then we're done. And with Fairy Tale, feel since it's 300 plus episodes, when I'm
Yeah,
now
you don't have to worry about that with fairy tale.
and so it's very good for me. And then what I also like about Fairy Tale is that it's transcended, I think, like 9 to 10 years too. And that's another thing where it kind of came in and it's sort of a generational show, meaning that
Yeah.
it was, I think, 3 years into one generation and ended like 3 years into the next a little bit. And that's a very cool thing in anime because I don't know. I mean, obviously, you worked on a bunch of stuff, but this is one of those shows that clearly was out there for a while. And what
Yeah.
is that like? Because it's kind of nice to have work.
Oh yeah, amen. I mean the that's the I mean that's the prime interest of a working actor is work. So yeah, it's really wonderful to have a character like that you'll be able to revisit. And who knows? I mean, who knows if we'll get to visit them yet again? One never knows as time goes by. So the gauge will always be there.
And then
He'll
you know,
always be there in some capacity.
I do want to change gears slightly because I do want to talk about Attack on Titan as well. And you played
Mm.
this character, and
Yes, honest.
I cried when he died. I'm sorry,
Oh,
guys. Dumbledore dies
yeah,
too. You know, I'm
yeah,
just letting everybody know, but I cried when he died. And
yeah.
it was season 3, I think, right? It was season 3, maybe 4.
I think you're right. It was a long time ago now. You know, that show, what the ground that show has traveled ever since. Man, um, what an epic! What an epic!
Let's actually
Yeah,
talk about that because Attack on Titan. So a fun story about Attack on Titan. I used to do fan anime panels, and I sold out 2 rooms, and I sold out in the Javits Center, 250 people to an Attack on Titan panel all by myself.
yeah,
And so Attack
yeah.
on Titan for me is very special. And it was one of those shows that I feel changed anime. And what is
Mhm.
that like? Because obviously you weren't the star. I don't think anybody is gonna fight me on that. But even to be part of a show like Attack on Titan, because I think in 30 years from now, people are gonna look at when that show came out and be like, oh, this was when anime went
Yeah,
through a change and a shift and became
yeah,
really, really popular and really, really cool. And it was the type of show
yeah.
that Julie, I didn't go out on my Saturdays during all season 1, and instead I was sitting waiting at 7:30 for it to drop on. And I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only one. So what was that like? Because I know that
Yeah,
you were in a bunch of episodes, but it's kind of a cool thing because there's a big momentum shift, I feel.
yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible to be involved in a show like that. Again, I mean, we never know, and particularly in those days, that was just Attack on Titan got started. I think right before we started doing the simuldub model. Right, it was somewhere in the midst of in the beginning on the beginning end of Attack on Titan that the simuldub model kind of became the thing, and so much has changed. And because that show has been going on since, uh, all these changes came during that show. And meanwhile, across the pond over in Japan, the level of animation of that show, I think you're right. I think it inspired a lot of things that came after it, and people saw, wow, if you really put energy into a deep and affecting story and really show change and growth and struggle in its characters and show uh, sometimes the wrong guy winning and the bad people, the good people failing, and uh, all these different things that show tackles. It's just extraordinary. But again, being a working actor, the thing you want more than anything else is work. And I started talking about the simuldub model because when that show first came along, um, I certainly had no idea what we were getting into. I think there were a few people who did, a few people who paid closer attention to its trajectory over in Japan and who kind of knew this is going to be a thing. Certainly, Funimation at the time's marketing department had a pretty good idea that it was going to be a big deal. So that's on me, I suppose, for not paying real attention. But as an actor, you're just happy to have a job. You're just happy to have a gig and be able to go back and do it again. Oh, this guy doesn't just appear in one episode. Great. So it's like it's the real simple joys for an actor, particularly at that time. And as it really started to catch on and people started to really respond to it, and it was just extraordinary to watch that happen. And the same with Fairy Tale. Again, I had no idea what I was getting into. I had no clue at all.
And then speaking about roles, I mean, there's a few others. Obviously, you were Real Steel in My Hero Academia right here. And then you were also
Yeah.
Polly in One Piece. And
Yes.
I love Water 7. I love One Piece. I'm a huge One Piece fan. And so obviously talk about, another 2 big shows that you were a part of that obviously have huge fan following, and never say never with those shows either, because those shows, you never
Yeah.
know when a character is coming back, what's going to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, I don't know if you've been following One Piece, but it's getting good now. Finally, it's getting really good.
Yeah. There is some stuff happening, and now the live action show that got so much attention. I haven't had a chance to watch it myself yet. I'm quite remiss, but I think it's kind of interesting to see how anime is starting to inform other media, which I've always known was coming. You know what I mean? Like the storytelling is so rich in anime, and we've had so many not so successful attempts to sort of take anime and adapt it for a Western audience into a film, and like that's a extremely difficult thing to do. Not just because you're translating, really expensive and vibrant animation into something real life. Well, now we have CGI. We didn't so long ago. But now I think what really interests me about anime is the different style of storytelling. It's rooted in Japanese culture. It comes from Japanese sort of cultural preferences in storytelling, and those are quite different from ours in the West. So you get these really interesting views of characters and of stories that in the West probably no one would ever greenlight. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
or
let's get
the
into
focus of an anime will be on an internal struggle of a character rather than the level of their martial arts, or you know what I mean. Plenty of examples to the contrary, but it's just the difference in the storytelling itself, the difference in the fundamentals of what makes those stories, what essentially makes those stories, is quite different. And so it's a very difficult thing to do, to translate. I mean, it's difficult enough just to translate it from Japanese to English and then adapt it into a workable script just in our business. But to take something like that and turn it into adapt it for an entirely different medium and for an entirely different audience, that's extraordinarily difficult. And it seems like, from all reports I've read, that One Piece did it really, really well. So that's exciting to me. And what's really exciting is the possibility that, not that CGI will be so great that we can make a live action Attack on Titan and the Titans will look real, but like what we can take from that storytelling to inform the way we construct stories and character over here. I think there's a very rich and fertile ground there for us to investigate. And I think we're only just, by we, I mean we Westerners, are only just getting started tapping into those story elements.
I've said this before, and I'm really big into comics, and I do a lot of people in comics. And right now, the place to be for comics is Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and a few other places because all these
Yeah.
people are doing these weird books and fun books and crazy ideas like zombies versus princesses, and it's a fun book. And then you have also some other stuff out there where you just have some cool anthologies like Cthulhu Invades Oz. And that sounds like a really fun idea where what would happen if a gigantic monster invades Oz and is Oz gonna fight Cthulhu? And then like Witch of the West, and is she teaming up with Cthulhu? But who's really in charge? And a lot of stuff happens that I think 10 years ago couldn't be done. And I don't think anime is any different. I mean, there's a few shows that I think really capture this that I think you were a part of. Obviously, Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon? Where I think you were Wilf Carzo. I think
Welf Crozo. Yeah.
And I like him. I like that character a lot. I mean, obviously, I had Bryson Bogus on, and that was great. And he's just a
B
great.
Boggs.
Oh, he's just a great human being. That guy. He's just an absolute great human being.
Agreed.
That was a while ago. That was maybe like 3-4 years ago at the start of COVID.
Wow.
But what is this like? Because that's a story I feel that 10, 15 years ago couldn't be told. And another story that you had a role in, which is this character, which is Haiku. And
yes.
I love Haiku. I love the coach. I haven't watched season 4 yet, so don't ruin it for me. Don't ruin it for me.
No spoilers.
I don't know if he's green, though. I don't know if he's green, is all I'm going to say.
I think they play some volleyball, man. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I'm pretty sure there's some volleyball involved.
I absolutely that's another Bryson Bogus role right there.
Yeah, Bryson tore that one up. And again, a very long running show. We worked on that for a really long time. So yeah, marvelous. And sports anime are such an anomalous thing, aren't they? I find sports anime, like, again, over in the West, like if you make a movie about a football team, it's not going to be full of a lot of feelings. You know what I mean? Generally, not a lot of feelings, except for striving the difficulties and triumph and winning the thing. You know, we like the winning, but like the man, those sports anime stuff like Haiku, just like the depth with which they delve into these characters and show them having like feelings, like there's and they're young, so they're sensitive kids, and like it's just that to me is the heart of storytelling. I don't watch a lot of movies about football for the same reason I don't watch a lot of football games. I'm just like the competition and the eyes on the prize and victory, like it gets very boring to me in storytelling very quickly.
I need to watch football. I need to like unwind.
Understandable.
I mean, working a 40-hour work week, doing this show, running an eBay business. I need all of Sunday to watch an intense game on a gridiron and open up and calm down and not think about anybody or anything.
Yeah.
And then I developed a nasty habit where I figured out that I'm good at gambling. So,
oh dear. For
don't
now.
worry, everybody. I'm up and I'm doing all right. My mother's not too happy with me, but I'll go buy the next round of Starbucks and everything will be fine.
Yeah, once you buy her that Maserati, she'll be off your back. It'll be great.
But all jokes aside, I thoroughly enjoy sports animes. And then obviously you've done a bunch of other stuff. And since we're talking about story, I mean, I want to talk about this because this is one of my favorite shows in probably the last 3 years, and that was Skate. And I'll be very honest. I thought Skate was going to be about death racing skateboarding with consequences and intensity. And oh my God, that thing took a left turn, did an upside down flip, did a U-turn, and then went down a steep hill at like a 90-degree drop. And it was amazing.
Cool, yeah.
So obviously you're Adam. This is Adam.
Yeah.
No, this is technically not Adam. This is Adam. This is technically Adam. This is
Adam.
Normal Adam.
Inosuke is his name. Inosuke.
They're the same person.
He grabs a pig, teases the hair out, puts on a little flare, and
so before we get too deep into this, I thought Skate was brilliant in so many ways. I thought it was high fly colors. I thought it was a fantastic show. And obviously it touches upon a lot of stuff that we're going to get into. And I'm very confused about Skate because it can be interpreted in 10 different ways. But I thought it was fantastic. But how did you get the role? Because it was a very different show than I think anything that came out before it, at least as far as I saw. And I watch a lot of anime, so I've never seen anything like Skate.
It's really kind of a unique entity, isn't it? I mean, we all were constantly surprised by it ourselves while we were working on it. Because, of course, we were working on that as a simuldub. I think, once again, like Attack on Titan, it started... Or no, it was right before quarantine it started. So it was a simuldub working under that model. So generally, we, as the actors and as the people in production... I did some assistant directing on that show as well. From every angle... In the simuldub model, we don't know what's coming. We don't know what the next episode is going to be. We may have the manga in some cases, not this one, to refer to, but it's anybody's bet as to whether or not an anime is going to follow the manga's model. You know what I mean? So we were constantly surprised by it, and it just kept upping the ante every episode. We go in there and they're like, wow. So yeah, how did I get the role? It was just a straight up audition. The director Kyle Phillips in the audition sides for Adam, which I'm pretty sure Adam was the only role I auditioned for on that list because everyone else was 14, right? Or whatever. 14, 16, 17, 22. It's all the same to me. But I auditioned for that, and one of the little lines in the sides was, something along the lines of like sing a song, sing something that sounds like opera or whatever. So I did, and of course the nature of Adam was quite present already in the lines in the audition sides. So I knew that character was just dripping, just absolutely dripping with the Riz. You know what I mean? So like I poured it on thick, and I think actually what ended up in the final show, once we started working, he got a little bit more grounded than I was in that original audition. But again, one of the boxes was sing a song, so I did like I did this absolutely ridiculous operatic thing. And Kyle told me he said, I heard that, and it was like I stopped. That's where I stopped listening to the rest of the audition. So yeah, it was by going balls to the wall in that audition. That's how I got that one.
Let's actually talk about this, because Skate, in which that, and hopefully I'm going to say this without offending anybody, definitely I felt presented LGBTQ themes and ideas in a mainstream position. I say this nervously, I'll say it openly, is that where I would expect to see this open and present in a Yowie type thing, a Yuri,
Yeah.
but this was the first time I kind of saw anything like this, minus what was the one about ice skating? That's the only
Yuri on Ice.
Yuri on Ice. That's the only other one that it was clearly presenting those themes.
Yeah.
And I mean, this seemed to me where that doesn't happen in anime. I mean, there's things and tropes in anime collectively like that, but there's never something that says we are presenting this and you have to be living under a rock if you don't see it. I mean, I'm being very honest and being very open about it, and nervously open about it.
No need to be nervous, darling. You're doing great.
No,
I'll tell you.
It's a sensitive topic. I'm being very open about it.
I appreciate that. And in case your audience isn't aware, I'm an openly gay man in the industry, have been for a long time. So this is territory I'm comfortable treading. But yes, you're right, and really interesting that you draw that line right back to Yuri on Ice, because I think Yuri on Ice taught Skate the Infinity a lot of tricks. One of them was that, as you say, in Yuri on Ice, it's pretty clear to anyone watching what that dynamic is between those two main characters. It's rather apparent. But if you look, if you really watch, there's no real visual indication of that. There are a few moments where the characters embrace, maybe they're kissing, the camera cuts away or pulls far back. They left it all very nebulous, which is sort of hinged on something that sports related anime has been playing upon for a really long time. Because in Japan, there's a large contingency of fans who want that experience. They want to see those boys being very tender and affectionate and sort of in touch with their feelings, and there's a really hungry audience for that over there. Over here, not as much, and it's a little different. And because of that, when Yuri on Ice was in Japan, was playing in Japan, it was a huge deal over there too. It was a prime time slot. And if it had, because of the way the rules work in Japan, if it had any overt demonstrations of gay affection, it would have automatically been relegated to TVMA, and it wouldn't have been able to be on broadcast in prime time. It wouldn't have been able to be seen as it was being seen.
Do you think, and I'm going to interrupt you, is that because the other thing about Skate and even Yuri on Ice, in my opinion, is that it was good storytelling at its core, first and foremost. So, this discussion about not safe for work comics. If you have a not safe for work comic, but you have a great story. So one of my favorite books is called Bang Tango. Bang Tango is definitely not safe for work, but the
Yeah.
story is about revenge and other things. And this girl's playing on this thing, getting revenge on the mob boss and her cheating boyfriend,
Yeah.
setting everybody up. And it's got some sexual stuff in there. And obviously, though, it's amazing storytelling first and foremost. And that's how I feel
Yeah.
about Yuri on Ice. That's how I feel about Skate. Is we have an amazing story, and then we have, I guess the other layer on top. And then we have the paint on the car for building it
Yeah.
again in comparison to a car. Then we have all the
Yeah.
accessories, and then we put the engine in, and then we put the souped up engine up on it. Versus
Right.
putting all the flair and all the buttons on, and then not having anything of substance.
Well, you're absolutely right. The story is the thing. The story is the crux. It's the foundation of everything. And particularly when it comes to telling a certain. I mean, if you set out to tell a story about queer people having queer experiences, then that's a very weak foundation from which to approach writing a story. I've had some writers ask me before. I particularly had a couple of several, writers who identify as heterosexual ask how to write a gay character without, making it seem broad or having it be misunderstood. And my conclusion to that is always the same, which is that what you do is you take out the gay, and if you still have a character, then you're golden. And the same thing with the story. You take that element out, and if the story still works without it, all by itself, you've got a good story. And that's what Yuri on Ice did. It had all those themes of athletic achievement and overcoming your personal obstacles and all of that stuff, achieving connectivity with this other human who in this case happened to be a male, but because of the way the rules were set up in Japan, if it had been any more overt than that, then they wouldn't have been able to put it in a primetime slot. Likewise, because it was being dubbed, and I wasn't involved directly in that dub. But while it was being dubbed over here, it was roughly the same time, because of the simultaneous model that was airing over there. So over here, they had to be a little careful about how to play some of those moments and how to leave them, leave some questions unanswered. You know what I mean?
Because how I felt about Skate, I mean, this is how I felt about Skate is that I took Skate a little bit different, where the first episode, I don't think there was nothing, any sexual undertones. It was like, oh, cool. We are in a death race type of skating show. And then we got to that relationship. And then I took it a little bit different, where I took it that both these characters didn't know how they felt about each other until episode 10. That's how I took it, where I took it a very different way. Where I like it wasn't clear. And then one of them was hurt because I think that it started becoming, hey, where are we going? What territory are we in here? And it was either episode 9 or 10 or 11. And then they were speaking to all these people, and then they kind of figured it out. But we don't know what happened next. We just know that the relationship now is somewhat intact together going forward.
Yeah, you're seeing the important things. You're seeing the important structural building blocks of that relationship forming. How many times they kiss or touch is really immaterial, But the difference was, I think Skate learned
that episode where they were separated. That was the most important part of the relationship in this whole show, because then it became beyond obvious, where it was becoming clear, but then it became obvious. And that's what makes Skate so interesting, is that it's such an interesting technique in that show.
Yeah, and the thing that Skate was able to do because of Yuri on Ice, Skate, which didn't make things that much more obvious to the viewer than Yuri on Ice did, except for the fact that Skate the Infinity was self-aware, right? It was aware of what it was doing. It was aware of the game it was playing. And, the inferences were far more like much lower hanging fruit, if you will. And so they were able to point at it and have a laugh about it and utilize it, and we attempted to do the same with the dub, to
Did you
be
also feel?
aware.
Did you also feel though that, and I'm going to say something that might be slightly offensive, is that skateboarding tends to be also more masculine as a sport, and then to some degree, and so where ice skating and also skateboarding, Tony Hawk is a lot cooler,
Yeah,
and so now you have a more prevalent, cooler, in my opinion, sport than ice skating. No offense to ice skating. I don't know anything about ice skating. I know a lot more about skateboarding. I think more people
sure.
can relate to skateboarding a little bit better. And then you
Yeah,
have those intense, very shonen-esque scenes. And then you have this relationship that is on a whole different side. And that's what
yeah,
makes skate so interesting, is that you're now blending these two things together. And then you have these characters in both very strong roles and very, I guess, relationship sensitive roles. And
hmm
that's what makes skate so interesting, is that you have both sides of the coin showing. I don't know if
yeah,
that makes any sense. And I'm trying to say this in like
sure,
the most normal way I could possibly conceptualize it, but like
sure.
it made skate a weird breed where I didn't feel that about Yuri on Ice, where I felt Yuri on Ice
Yeah,
was a very sensitive, very, soft, very,
yeah,
mushy show and gushy and the type of thing where I want to just have like my hot chocolate when it's snowing out and watch Yuri on Ice.
yeah,
Like I want to
yeah,
watch like I want to watch skate legitly like when it's like 90 degrees out sitting in my driveway.
yeah.
Like
Well, you make an excellent point that and I think Skate the Infinity, whether it did so on purpose or not, it rode this line absolutely beautifully, which is, as you say, in professional skateboarding, what little I know of it, you're right, it's largely hetero dominated. But on the streets, at least at the time, the last time I was hanging out regularly with skateboarders was like in the 90s. Been a while. These were the kids in like at the Cube in the East Village in New York who were like, but like on the street, there's a huge population of queer kids involved in skating. Like there are all kinds of kids involved in skating because for a really long time now, it's been sort of the sport of the youth, right? So Skate the Infinity, knowing, danced with that little algorithm very beautifully, connecting with the kids who were practicing skating on the weekends on like a ramp they built themselves, as opposed to the professionals. Um, and yeah, I think Skate the Infinity at some point had to be aware of that because I can tell you from it's personal and purely anecdotal experience, but I find there's a healthy and large queer population involved in skating. So the show tapped into that beautifully, whether it meant to or not. It sure did. So
I,
yeah,
I know very little about skateboarding. I know a lot more about skateboarding
yeah,
than I do know about ice skating. I am a football, baseball guy. And I can tell you that, that those are very hetero dominant sports for sure.
oh yeah, yeah.
UFC is not though, apparently.
Hey, well,
The the
it's nice.
women the
The kids are
women
catching up.
fighters the women fighters in UFC are much better than the men by far. I mean, Ronda Rousey,
Well,
her prime time,
yeah.
everybody. Amanda Nunes,
Again,
those women
I think
scare me.
yeah, I think as UFC again is a younger sport. You know what I mean? UFC doesn't have the traditions baked into it that baseball, the great American pastime, or American football, or any of those things do. There's a large, long legacy
Fair
with
enough.
the nation's relationship to those sports, and for a really long time in sports, you if you were the least bit queer in the slightest way, you could not let on. It was going to make your professional and your personal life miserable
They're,
because
they're,
you were
they're
surrounded by dudes in
look
a
at.
locker
I
room
mean,
culture.
I don't know how much you are a fan of WWE, but it took a guy, I think Darren Young, Fred Rossner. He was just being interviewed by TMZ, and they asked him, "Do you think a gay superstar could make it into the WWE?" He said, yeah, I mean, I'm making it. And then they asked him, and like you could tell TMZ was a little shocked, saying, what, you're gay? They like,
Huh?
and then like
Huh?
he freaked out because he just dropped it. And then he called the friends like, yo, you got to call WWE and let them know what just happened. And then what wound up happening is he went on Ellen, and then all this stuff happened, and it was great. And I mean, he wasn't treated, and all these people said, I'm not going to treat him any differently. If he fucks up in the locker room, he fucks up in the locker room. That's his
Yeah.
problem if he botches a match. But
Yeah.
apparently, and then like he got involved in Be a Star, and obviously, but I don't think that could have happened because Pat Patterson came out as gay, but after his time in WWE. And so obviously that changed. And then you look at something like Sonya Deville, and Sonya Deville is an open lesbian wrestler in WWE. And again, that couldn't have happened 10 years ago. And so it's very
you're right.
what's going on. And obviously progress is being made. But I do agree. And I think that obviously skateboarding, UFC has a very different thing because it's not as, I guess, old is a good way to put it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's not as old, but it's also like, particularly with skateboarding, it's like, yeah, there are pros. Yeah, there's Tony Hawk. He's got some video games. All that's cool. But like the real heartbeat of skateboarding has always been with like kids in cutoff denim, like at a construction site skating inside the pool that's not finished yet. It's like it's a sport that lives on the streets. It's like it's sort of the reverse of football. We play football, on when we're kids in the yard, whatever, at school, at recess. But like professional football lives in this stratosphere. But in skating, it's kind of the reverse. People are enthusiastic, watching like the professional skaters, the pro skaters really do their thing. I think is it an Olympic sport yet? I know snowboarding finally made it, but like, so like the real stars of skateboarding are the ones whose name you don't know, who are, turning tricks, doing ollies in the parking lot at the old mall nobody goes to anymore. You know what I mean? Those are the superstars, and that's what skate's for. That's what skate's about.
So even to go further into this, because this is also interesting, is that obviously, I think culture has changed. I believe that collectively culture from 10 years ago, 15 years ago has changed. I think obviously there's been more of an indie push for everything. I think things that couldn't get made are going to be getting made. I would not be surprised that if the next, in 5 years from now, the next 10 big anime hits, at least 2 of them are not kickstarted. I would be very, very, very surprised if that wasn't the case. That doesn't mean it won't come on into Funimation after, it won't be distributed by somebody or Crunchyroll or whatever that blend is called now. I don't know, or Sentai Films, or I don't know. I don't know if there's any others out there at this point. I mean, Rooster Teeth, I think, is still around, right? But what is that like for you, though? Because skate is a good representation of LGBTQ. And what is that like for you? Because that's important that this gets done correctly. Because let's be realistic here. There's 3 problems. First and foremost, from 1990 to 2000, everything was Americanized. And even going past that, when anime was coming over, it was completely shot over and dubbed and made into an American thing. So that has also changed naturally. And then, then I think that happened. And then there's also fear, because you don't want to upset corporate overlords at some point, because you do have to make money, and those decisions are not fun to make sometimes, whether they're right or wrong. And then now there's been a purist position. And I also think that tolerance has an acceptance has sort of moved into this too, where now you don't have to hide the gay character, for lack of a better word. You could let the gay character be the gay character and push them forward. Sailor Moon did this very well, where they finally the cousin, and I forget, it's Neptune and is it Uranus? I think
it's Uranus, Sailor Uranus.
And I think it's Neptune, right? Because I get confused. It's been a while since I've seen Sailor Moon, but that finally happened too, where I think when Sailor Moon first came out, I don't know if people were ready for it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the real thing is, particularly anime. Speaking specifically just of anime, anime's never been afraid. Anime rarely has hidden its gay characters. You know, like so many other enterprises in years previous, um, queerness was ascribed to characters for all the wrong reasons, right? And you got very over the top, sort of melodramatic performances, you know. But the difficulty was at the root of it, those characters really just suffered for their queerness, you know, or were meant to be seen as characters who were in some way uh, pitiable, you know, or sometimes villainous. um, you know, queer coding characters for really all the wrong reasons is an old practice, and anime in Japan was just as good at it as, you know, we got at it over here, with all these, like, throughout all the decades of like queer coded villains, and like just really all the wrong ways to utilize queerness in a performance. But what's happening now is that people are taking a more serious and a deeper look at that experience. The voice of queer people is rising and being heard in ways that it hasn't before, and we're really tired of of being relegated to villains all the time, just because it's like, oh, how do we make this villain even more despicable? We'll make him gay. You know what I mean? It's like that's the thought process that fed a lot of that. But things are really changing now. And socially, they're changing as well in this country, where like 10, 20 years ago, if you were in a large group, you know, all things being equal, if you were in a large gathering of people, right, just some gathered crowd, and someone made some little gay joke, everybody would like laugh and like, even the gay people in the audience be like, no one must know, no one must know, that's a funny joke, right? Now, if you're in a group of people and someone makes some shitty comment about gay people, the room will rise up against that. I mean, unless, of course, it's a group of like-minded individuals all wearing the same color hat. You know what I mean? Unless you seek out an audience that's going to be specifically comfortable with that kind of prejudice, then generally those tables have turned. And now, if you say something that's anti-feminine or homophobic or racist, like, people are a lot less willing to let that pass, and they're certainly a lot less willing to like go, that's funny, just to play it off and move on. You know what I mean? So that's a complete and total societal change that I never thought I'd see that time in my life. um
So to even go further into this, I mean, what is this like for you? Because obviously you've been doing this for a long time in voice
yeah,
acting. And so obviously to even see that change, and also I know you do a lot of advocacy. And so what is that like for you? Because obviously you don't want to discourage anybody from voice acting. I had Barry Yandel on, and he plays Mr. Tubon Clay.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
obviously, and feel free to disagree with me, I think a straight voice actor can play a gay character, and I think a gay character or a gay voice actor could play a straight character. And I think obviously you could play any character. The whole thing is that it's called acting. And I don't think that that's the problem. I think the problem is
hmm,
that a lot of it is source writing. And also, even when you get something, you then go interpret it, and then
yeah,
that's probably what happened too, is that some of the source writing was problematic. And it's kind
yeah,
of, if you took something from the 1970s in anime and it quote unquote queer coded, but you want to keep it authentic,
yeah,
it creates a whole dichotomy problem. But then you go
yeah,
to have a character, and I'm trying to think of a show off the top of my head that doesn't do this and does it well. But then you don't do that and it's written well. I mean, that's also part of it being solved too, is that One Piece has characters that do this well in
hmm,
certain ways. And so that's also the other thing, where the writing and the source material has gotten better too. And I think some of that's been eliminated just on a source level.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly right about that at the source level. The writing is key. I think it's a much more complex issue
Mhm.
than probably we can cover here without going for like 3 hours. But like, yeah, the something that anime is doing now, something the dubs industry is doing now is they're very specifically going after queer actors to play queer characters, just like they're going after African American actors to play African American characters. There's a seeking out of authenticity in performers now, which is a great thing. And yes, you're absolutely right that an actor's job is to act, to assume a character they may not know. That's the beauty of the art form. But the difficulty is that that's true if all things being equal. But all things are not equal, and they haven't been for a really long time. And you will have, for example, in Western media, you will have a straight actor play a gay role. Hollywood will call them the bravest performer ever and give them an Academy Award. It's happened countless times already. But at the same time, a gay actor in Hollywood who came out as gay, it was the end of their career. You know, this going up until the middle 2000s, and even still, there's stigma about actors in Hollywood coming out. There are still actors who are in the closet because it will affect their career, not because of what audiences are willing to consume, but because of what executives are willing to finance, right? So all things are not equal. And for a really long time, the out queer actor has been sort of relegated to, token roles, things like that. So there's a period of overcorrection that we're in now, where where we're seeking out authentic versions of these people to portray this element of the character. And I think that's a necessary part of the process to coming to a point where uh, we don't worry about these things anymore. You know what I mean? Where it's not such a big deal anymore, and we don't, we as queer people don't feel so underrepresented and so relegated to the back seat. Um, and I don't think that's going to take very long. But I think this period of overcorrection, frustrating as it is, I think we get ourselves into a lot of trouble when we harp on what's politically correct, what's socially acceptable. At the same time, it's kind of art's job to fly in the face of what's politically correct and socially acceptable. But it's in art first, generally, where a societal change like that is going to come. And so I think it behooves us to honor those elements of character now. I don't think it always will, but I think because of the point from which we are coming and the point to which we hope to go, that overcorrective state is a necessary part of the growth of society, right? But you're absolutely right that, and it's something that the dubs industry has kind of fallen into this trap, right? Where at the biggest studios, they get a show like this, and what they do is they don't spend a moment's thought on who's writing the adaptation. This isn't over in Japan. This is once we get it for a dub. They don't spend any thought over, whether or not a person with an authentic understanding of the subject matter is writing the script or directing the show,
or even just consulting. I mean, even
right?
forgetting about writing.
They don't hire consultants. That would cost them extra money. So
yeah,
you don't hire
you
consultants.
get where I'm going with it, right?
So yeah. So what they'll do is they'll hire an actor who's like out and queer. If they've got a trans character, they'll find a trans actor, and they feel like up in the business offices of these studios that the job is done.
We got our asses covered, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But what I've been yelling at them about for the last, I don't know, 10 years now is it's got to start at the root. It's got to start at the very bottom. And someone who understands this process needs to write that script and direct that show. If the director doesn't understand, and this isn't this isn't in every case where there's queerness in an anime, but particularly in shows that deal specifically with the LGBTQ experience. You can't just hand that role off to a queer actor and be like, oh, well, we've done it, we got it, we're all good, we're covered. Because if the story isn't authentic, that actor has nothing authentic to play. You know what I mean? So again, we're in a difficult time.
Well, let's actually talk about this, because obviously you do some assistant directing, you do some ADR work for, I think, some Yaoi titles, some Yuri titles.
Well, I've directed several.
Yeah, and you've done a bunch of stuff. I think you've been in a few of them that you directed too. I heard that director on that show was really good because it was yourself. So anyway, so what is that like? Because I think with especially a Yaoi title, a Yuri title, if you're directing and you are queer, you are LGBTQ, or you have a real understanding of it, or you're an expert in that area for whatever reason, I think that does add some authenticity, and I think that's important, especially when you get really specific. I think with One Piece, for instance, that is not an LGBT themed show. It has LGBT characters in there, but that is not an LGBT show. I don't think it's not an LGBT show, but I don't think you need a queer person directing that show unless they're the best qualified for that job. And if they are, they should have that job. But what is that like, though, when you're doing that? Because I think you've done a bunch for Sentai works, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Sentai as well as Crunchyroll, yeah.
So what is that like? Because those shows, and I say it's a nice way, that could get fucked up really quickly if you have to really quickly. More so than anything else.
Well, I think I make it harder on myself than I need to, because I'm forever seeking the how I can take a moment and make it ring really true. Like when I make an anime like that, like when I directed Love Stage or Given or Stranger by the Shore or Hitarizume My Hero or Bloom Into You, any of these, I'm looking at the experience, I'm looking at these scenes and these things that are transpiring between the characters. And what I'm trying to do is craft those so that they resonate with someone who doesn't know anime, who didn't read the manga, who doesn't subscribe to Crunchyroll, you know what I mean? But who's looking for an authentic representation of themselves. And it's the subtlest little things, the tiniest little changes, alterations in adaptation can make those things really resonate with an audience who's attuned to hear that frequency. You know what I mean? So that's who I'm rendering those things for. And it's always the case when you're directing an anime that a lot of changes happen to the script, and that's just a part of the process. A writer writes the script, but the line they wrote doesn't always really work in the set of flaps that we have with the rhythm of the actor who's doing the line. So changes are always necessary. Text is liquid in this business until it's committed to Blu-ray or whatever, but so like my goal is to render those events with an authenticity that someone who's had something akin to those experiences will hear, and it will click with them, and they'll go, oh, the person who put that scene together knows exactly what that feels like. And a great actor can do a lot. A great actor can do a lot for you to give those scenes the vitality they need. But even the greatest actor can't do for you what good dialogue can do.
Did you also feel, because, and I'll be honest, I'm probably not going to watch a yaoi. I am a straight heterosexual male. It's not my cup of tea. But the person who wants to watch that obviously is looking for that, and that's a product catered to them. And so obviously, I have a physical disability. So if I'm to do something in that space, I am going to be writing to somebody who has that. So if I'm writing an economic advice column for people with disabilities, that is catered to a specific audience. And there's going to be words and thought processes and ideas presented that might not apply to the general public because that product is not built for the general public. Doesn't mean the general public can't utilize it, but I also feel that it is a responsibility sometimes. Not saying that not everybody can watch whatever they want to watch, but I view when a Yowie is being produced, it is produced for a specific group in mind, first and foremost. And obviously, being an open gay man, you obviously, I think that's what Yowie is somewhat produced for. So I feel like it's almost a responsibility to make sure it is as authentic as possible.
Well, you know what's really interesting about Yowie is where it began.
Still, but
I mean, most of the fans in Japan are female. Yowie did not aspire to tell authentic queer stories, not in the beginning. Sometimes they accidentally did anyway. But that was never Yowie's purpose. And Yowie, I think, you know,
didn't I? I just walked right into this, didn't I? Like smack into the wall.
Yeah, well, you know, a little history, you know, and I imagine as a straight man, you probably haven't done a lot of research on Yowie, so you know, forgiven. But yeah, like the Yowie was never intended to be an authentic telling of that tale. But as the years have gone by, and again, I think Free did a lot for this, and I think Yuri on Ice was kind of the breakthrough champion of this, which is that those shows, and particularly Yuri on Ice, being as unbelievably queer as it was, kind of broke the mold, right? Because that show was being loved by everyone. It was huge in Japan. And it was really big over here. And it was happening during the Olympics, and there were Olympic skaters who were like, Yuri on Ice. I think one of them skated to the Yuri on Ice theme, right? So like, it's I think it showed the creators of content over in Japan and the adapters of content over here in the States that if you treat characters like this well, if you treat them with authenticity and with respect, then the story you tell is going to relate to a great many people who wouldn't go looking for a Yowie title. Because, of course, after all, Yuri on Ice is a sports anime, not a Yowie title. There's no physical male-to-male affection other than, like, a friendly hug. You know what I mean? So, like, that's... you know, audiences will respond to that anyway. And because we're reaching a more illuminated stage of existence when it comes to these things, audiences are less likely to revile it when they detect a little hint of that. You know what I mean? Oh, queerness, click. You know, that was a lot more common back in the day than it is now. And it's purely legitimate that there are plenty of people who just aren't into romance anime, regardless of who's in it, or they're only into romance anime if it's a really cute girl and a really, like, you know, grungy dude, or like whatever your magical combination.
Grungy like this.
Yes, Bulat is just a lot. Yeah. But yeah, so like, you know. Pardon. You know, I think we're moving forward quite a lot now, and I think the inherent queerness of anime is becoming more and more apparent.
Let me ask this, because I've noticed a trend in anime where obviously I've been an anime fan. I'm 30. I've been watching this stuff since I was like 7. So I've been around for 23 years in this, and I was the kid that never got shoved into a locker. But if I was 5 years before, I'd be shoved into a locker in middle school and high school. I'm that kid. I was luckily that I was smart. I knew how to keep my head down, and I surrounded myself with friends who are rather deadly with their hands, so it's helpful. But hey, make friends with the martial artists.
Yes.
Don't worry. Their taxes, they protect me. It's all good. To even trade. But anyway, I've noticed that in the last 10 years, it used to be that you needed to watch Dragon Ball Z. You needed to see Sailor Moon. You needed to see Full Metal Alchemist. You needed to, watch a Gundam. And now you don't need to do any of that. And now there are people who are watching obscure anime, and it's like, I've never heard of this show. And like, what do you mean you've never seen Dragon Ball Z? Like, what's wrong with you? And like, that's my reaction. And the reason why I'm laughing, I think you're laughing a little bit, is that there's been a massive shift. And I think that also with LGBTQ shows and other obscure shows and other things, the fan base has become more divergent off of its core that existed 15, 20 years ago. And I think that's also something that's been a very interesting experience for me as somebody who's been around for 23 years, because now I go to an anime con and I'm seeing 4 different sectors of generations and a bunch of people saying, like Full Metal Alchemist, Brotherhood was great. And then all these new generation kids know nothing about that show. But they know about other things. And I'm like, how did you not see this? And then like I'm speaking to them, somebody's like, oh, I just saw that. That was amazing. Like, how the hell did I not see this before? And like, so I don't know if that's a factor as well, because to me, that seems that we have now, it's almost like the Big Bang and everything has expanded outward massively.
Yeah. Well, you know, particularly over here in the States, long ago, you didn't get a lot of anime, right? There wasn't a lot coming over. There's certainly nothing like what there is now. So what we got generally were the big shows over there, the ones that made a lot of noise, the Dragon Balls and the Gachamans and you know what I mean? Like that stuff that really was noisy over there, and we wanted to bring it over here and localize it and you know, see what we can get out of it, you know, and there was some success there. But because of that, over here, a lot of people think of anime, all of anime, as a genre, right? Which it is not. It's a medium, and within that medium is any genre you can think of. There's action, there's horror, there's porno, there's romance, there's comedy. It's all there. And for a really long time, what's that?
There's biblical. Seriously, it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And
so the more of it we have access to, you know, the more we understand over here how broad the pickings are in the field of anime. And there's something for anyone. And we're kind of just getting hip to that in these last 10, 15 years, as things have been sort of taking off for anime in the States, and people are starting to see, Dragon Ball Z isn't the only anime ever. You know what I mean? So like people are getting hip to that. And I think, you know, that quotient will only increase as time goes on, because Japan is still Japan makes more of it every year than we could ever watch. So like there's an example of everything to be had. It's a whole medium. And so, I'm glad. I'm glad of it. I'm glad that you know, the audience that doesn't feel served by something like a Dragon Ball Z can go and find something like a Bloom Into You, which will serve them. You know, I guess that's the real benefit of having like these giant banks of titles in streaming services and things like that. I mean, you can really.
I'll be honest. I think the greatest thing ever, you know, is Crunchyroll, and I think the second best thing is Netflix. I think those two things have done wonders for anime, and whether you're a big corporation person or not, those two things have done the ultimate thing where they have served the customer. And I don't see how that's a bad thing. I think Crunchyroll for $80 a year is a steal. It is a bargain, and you can never run out of content on Crunchyroll. I've run the numbers. I've run the numbers on an estimation title. It would take you to watch their current library about 3 years nonstop, meaning 24 hours. You'd have to sit in front of your computer. It would take you about 3.5 years to go through their whole library, assuming they don't add anything onto it.
Yeah.
That's all.
I know they're gonna.
It's a lot of time, everybody.
I mean, it's just extraordinary because pretty much whatever you're a fan of, whatever genre you really love, however obscure or fringe, there's something there for you in anime. And I think, audiences are starting to get hip to that. I was the victim of the same thing. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. So the only anime I ever knew anything about was Speed Racer and what we were then calling Battle of the Planets on Saturday mornings, right? Which was Gatchaman rebranded.
And maybe
And that
Gigantor.
is all I knew.
Gigantor was there too, right?
Gigantor was there. I didn't see it, but yes. But like there was nothing to see. And so I knew nothing of the width and breadth of anime until many years later. I worked at a Blockbuster Video when we still had those, and they had a section labeled Japanimation, and it was one bay. It was just one bay of videos. And looking through it, I saw a couple of titles on it that I don't remember. Like, they looked a lot like more Speed Racer, and I was like, I don't know. I kind of can move on from that. But I found 3 titles in there that I took home and watched that I had never seen before or heard of or knew anything about. It was Vampire Hunter D, it was Golgo 13 the Professional, and it was Grave of the Fireflies. Those were the 3 titles I took home.
Which one was the best out of those 3?
Well, I mean, apples and oranges, man. I Grave of the Fireflies was just breathtaking and heartrending, and like, I had no idea anime could do that. I had no idea animation could do that.
It caught you.
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, I likened it at the time because when I saw it, it was somewhere near the release of a Spielberg film called Empire of the Sun, which was a World War II movie. It starred John Malkovich and a very, very young Christian Bale. Amazing film. And Grave of the Fireflies smacked of that to me. And I was like, what kind of psychopath would take this story and make it animated? This is crazy, But like, that's where I learned how far the storytelling could go. And with Golgo 13, I learned how far into like adult territory and not for kids it could go. I mean, that certainly Golgo 13 didn't push that envelope very far, but way farther than Speed Racer did, right? And Vampire Hunter D was just like this fever dream, this psychotic, weird thing. And none of these were anything like Speed Racer or Battle of the Planets. So like, I had no idea until I saw those what else anime had to offer. And I think sort of the world at large, or the West at large, is kind of having that experience now. Like, I thought anime was just Dragon Ball. I didn't know this was here. It's extraordinary. It's such a huge it's such an endless field of pickings. So I'm glad it's catching on. I'm glad people are seeing that there's so many stories to be told and already told in that medium that it's just enormous. Hallelujah.
Yeah. And then I do want to change gears before I give you a chance to promote yourself. And I have to ask you, how do you feel about Shin Godzilla?
Shin Godzilla? I've not seen it. Do I have to have feelings about it? Right, I love it.
Perfect. And then obviously I want to ask you something else and a few other things. And I am curious where you feel, because obviously you've been around in the whole voice acting community for a while. You've seen a lot of changes. Obviously you spoke about a lot of that, but I am curious where you feel it is going, because I think you touched upon a little bit, but I feel COVID has changed things in everything in the world. I think COVID has changed anime. I think it has changed what can be done. I could tell you that this whole show would not exist without COVID, because I was doing pre-recorded and then everybody was getting screwed over. So I decided to do live, and I thought it was going to be 3 months. I thought the problem was going to be solved. I'm not the only one.
And here you are.
and apparently COVID was 2.5 years, give or take, or a year and a half. And it wound up just taking off what I was doing, and everybody needed help. And so obviously, and I'm interviewing people from all over the world. And obviously now I think voice acting, for the most part, some of it has to be done in studio, but there are voice actors that could be in California who do work for Texas and Crunchyroll and Sentai, and then there's people who live elsewhere. And so I'm just curious how you feel because you're in the industry. And obviously I am just a fan and I am a commentator at best. And that's me being generous to myself. I am barely making it.
Well, as you've observed, things have changed so drastically. Not the least of which, is the fact that there's so much more of it to do now. When I started in this business, it was like, there was nowhere near this amount of titles and this regular work and just this flood every season of new material. And in fact, back then we just recorded everything for DVD, so the business has changed so dramatically. And I think that right now what's happening in this business is it's a lot like what happens in the record business whenever there's a fad, whenever there's a new big thing, right? In the music business. Like, it's such a huge expansion, and it's such new territory comparatively to things like film and television and standard media over here in the West in particular. And there's this mass expansion, these business interests, ownership interests who are recognizing how it's taking hold and how it's starting to become a part of the culture and looking to capitalize on it. And I think the general industry business practice, in all of business altogether, like, you see a thing's working, so you flood that thing into the market, right? And you expand your operations. You do all these things. I think the danger that we face in our business is that the more successful we become, the less the less we have to focus on the quality of what we're doing. When quantity takes over, quality can suffer. And because you have so much to do, I mean, it's purely technical. ADR directors back in the day had one show to focus on at a time, and a lot of time to prep for that show, and a lot of time to consider, and time to cast, and time to do all these things. But nowadays, full-time ADR directors are working on 2 or 3 titles at a time. They're working under a simuldub model, which means they're telling a story and they don't know what happens in the next chapter of that story. There are a lot of changes that have come, and as exciting as it is for this business, for this industry to expand and become a much more prevalent part of the American entertainment library, if you will, we run a real danger of not paying very close attention to the quality of the stories that we're telling, or the amount of time we're afforded to invest in telling those stories and making them great. Thankfully, there are still great directors and writers who are able to do good work despite those things. But I'm a little afraid of the ever magnifying output, because I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying I feel you because I've seen it with comics.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if somebody's doing a
Yeah.
Kickstarter and they're doing one every single quarter, they could spend 12 weeks prepping up. And there's 2 things. Obviously, you don't want to drain your supporters, where it's the idea that you can milk the cow or you could kill the cow. There are 2 ways how to get money out of your cow. One of them doesn't kill the cow, and you'll get your money over 20 years, but you'll get it every single day. Or if you kill the cow, great. You bought the cow for $10, you sold it for 20 because you killed it, but you don't have a cow anymore. So, it's how you want to do something and how you want to figure it out. But also I've seen quality decrease when people are putting out 16, 17 Kickstarters a year. And then all of a sudden, book 7 looks shitty. It just looks shitty, and it's written shitty. And it's just like, I get that you're doing $45,000 on a Kickstarter for your book, but this is not good. And then you say, why is this person's position dwindling down? And well, no offense, but if you're putting out a lot of content and it's getting worse and worse and worse, and you're not putting in, your first thing was great, but then it's slowly dwindling down. I mean, so it's a concern because I don't know how much anime you watch, but I watch probably about 300, 350 episodes a year. And I can tell when a show is done beautifully, and I can tell when a show is done really bad. And I'm not going to name bad shows, but I'll name a good one. Dr. Stone is great. Rise of the Shield Hero is really done well. But there's been plenty of bad things that I'm like, something was missing here, and it wasn't the voice cast. But even the voice cast, they only had so much they could work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's always kind of the struggle when art meets commerce, right? It's like one of the most difficult things any artist will ever face is success, because then you've got to figure out how to keep doing what you're doing, and you're fitting in a lot more people want you to work for them, and there's a lot more material coming because all of the audience is really responding to this stuff. So we want to do 4 more complete shows like that one. It's just like the corporate interests forever want to push the envelope as to how far they can push profitability. And in a business like this, you push profitability further by adding more content. But when they do that, but they don't hire more writers, and they don't hire more directors and engineers, and they just squeeze the schedule tighter and tighter, so you've got no time to like address the magic that's inherent in these stories, and to think about them and carefully consider how you're going to handle this scene that's coming up in 2 episodes. Like, we can't even do that now because of the simuldub model. We don't know what it's gonna look like in 2 episodes. I remember this great story. I don't remember the title, and I don't remember who the director was, so I'll protect their innocence with my faulty memory. Everyone should be relaxing over that. But there was a show when the simuldub thing first took hold. There was a director who got this show, got the first episode, only knew what was coming in the first episode of the show, and saw this great cast, and it filled the cast with like the glitterati of voice actors working at that time. And then we dubbed it, put it out, everything's great, we're doing the show, it's off, it's running. Episode 2, they all die. Everyone dead. They all died, and the interest of the show moved on to another group of characters. But that actor had blown his whole wad on like hiring his very favorite and best actors to be in that first episode, and he had no idea that was going to happen. That's what simuldubs get you. It's real. It's great on the business end because it's great on the customer end. If you know that like this show just came out and I can watch the dub tomorrow, then that's going to keep you hooked, and it's going to keep you coming back every week if you like it, right? But like on the creative end, it's like, how do you tell a story if you don't know what happens in the next paragraph? You know what I mean? It can be very, very challenging. And those of us who've worked under that model have had to find some creative ways to like keep a through line, to understand what's coming as best we can. Again, it's helpful when there's a manga, but sometimes it's the opposite of helpful when there's a manga because the show departs from the manga completely. So it's like there's no net, you're on a high wire with no net, and overseas they won't even give you a peek as to what's coming. Like the Japanese producers won't share that information with the American dubbing companies, so they don't know what's coming.
What
No one
nice
knows.
people are. What nice people they are.
I don't. You know what I don't understand about anime? Why it's come to treasure its secrets so highly. Like everything has to be a secret in this business, and I just don't get it. I
I
don't
could tell you
understand
why.
that
I could tell you
modus operandi.
the answer is simple is that they want to keep things as tight as possible because they don't want leaks. And they feel that if they leak it to you guys, somebody's going to leak it out to the public, and then it's going to lose its glimmer shine, and then the shock is
Yeah,
over, or somebody's going to monetize something out of it,
yeah,
and that's what it comes down to. But
yeah,
again, I understand it because I run a business, but I'm
yeah,
not saying it's the answer either. It's just like it's half a dozen of one or half a dozen of the other. It's pick your
yeah,
poison. I mean, that's
yeah,
what it comes down to, but I digress. I don't know anything else. I'm not gonna be professing. There's a reason why, and I've said this before, I don't want to be a voice actor, and I don't know if I could do it, but if I could, I would probably pass because I really enjoy watching anime, and I would like to really enjoy watching anime, and I don't want to ruin it because if I was a voice actor, it would ruin anime for me. It would ruin it for me. It would completely ruin it for me. And there's a reason why I'm not a voice actor and I have no desire to pursue it.
yeah,
And that's assuming I could do it. I don't know if I could do it. So I don't have to cross that bridge. But we've been speaking for a while, and I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself. So where could people find you, bother you, hit you up, disturb you, buy your merch, see you at a con, PayPal you, Cash App you?
you will find I'm lousy at promoting myself. I don't have any cons lined up. I don't sell any merchandise. I don't, you know, I'm not my own vending machine. Just to put in a quarter and pull a crank and get a Dave keychain. No, I don't have any of that stuff. You can find me on Twitter. Uh, uh, it's not called Twitter anymore, but it is as far as I'm concerned. Um, uh, it's like David Wald VA, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, I'm out there, but Andrew, I'm too busy working. I didn't get into this business to go sell prints of myself. I got into this business so that I could work and like dive into these stories and tell these stories and create them and then send them out and let the stories sing the song. I don't need to. I don't know. I don't need. There's nothing for me to promote except the stories I'm telling, which you can find all over Crunchyroll and High Dive and Netflix and Funimation for as long as it lasts. And you know, I'd rather you go look at the work than like come looking for me. You know what I mean?
Well, I am glad you took time out of your day to hang out with me on my show. Because obviously I'm a huge fan. I really enjoyed your work. I've been watching your work for a while. Not watching, hearing. I want to make that crystal clear. I've been hearing your voice, not in my head, but from the television / my laptop. It'd be really weird if it was in my head. That'd be really weird. But anyway,
Yeah.
but you have a nice, soothing voice, so it wouldn't be the worst of
Well,
things.
thank you.
but
Yeah.
I digress. I digress, but obviously I'm going to keep saying it. You have to support what people are doing with voice acting and voice actors. There's a few ways how to support them. Obviously, watching anime legally is a big one. So Crunchyroll is an option. HD Live is another. Netflix, Amazon. If you have another legal streaming service, that's great. Or buy the Blu-rays. That's very important in certain regards. Also, obviously, following people on social media. If somebody's at a con and they're signing something, going to support them at a con or asking constantly, hey, I'd like to see this person. That's always helpful as well. And that stuff really does matter. And if I didn't already say social media, again, I'm going to say it is super important following people on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, TikTok, wherever they're at, super helpful. And when they do have merch, pick up their merch. So it goes a long way. And then as far as I'm concerned, I am Pop Anime Comics on Twitter /X, Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook. I am Pop Anime Comics on YouTube. So please subscribe, everybody. I do need the subscribers. We are at 557. I would like to get 560 by the end of 2024. I know we are still in 2023. I think we can get 3 more in the next 378 days, I want to say, around that number or more. I don't know, but I think we can get 3 more, guys. I'm rooting for myself here. I'll be very disappointed if I can't do it. 3 more.
3 more. You got this.
In 400 days. Okay, guys? We can do this as a team here. This is a team effort. Yeah. But also TikTok is Pop Anime Comics. And so anything Pop Anime Comics, anything conversations in pop culture is my stuff, unless I owe you money. And if that's the case, I'm going to quietly walk away as if I broke something in a store. So that's everything that I got. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Well, Andrew, it's been an absolute pleasure to appear with you today. I really appreciate you having me on. And what you said is true and valid. Yeah, go support. Go support, friends. Go support friends, friends.
I don't think I could have said that any better myself, everybody. And that is a wrap.